I am in Wyman Park, and I mean, just take a look up here. You can see this tree looks like it was struck by lightning. Over here, these batting cages are definitely going to have to be put back together. And then if you walk with me over here, you can see that this tree narrowly missed some power line. Our fire crews did just get a house fire under control. I'm going to let you take a little bit of a closer look about what's going on. And this area behind me is very pretty to look at and a great place to take a walk. But management here at Arbor Lakes would like to see this road extended through the walkway to make it more accessible to car traffic instead of foot traffic. Samantha Vang is representing District 40B of Brooklyn Center, and as we know, that's a very diverse area. This bag is filled completely with Japanese beetles. Now, this bag's been here for about a week, but earlier in the summer, they would have had to be emptying it every single day. They're attracted to the bag by this pheromone. With just the click of a button, police officers will have access to information they need when they respond to a situation that involves a person with disabilities. Here at Winnetka Pond and Crystal, city workers are getting rid of over 18,000 cubic yards of sediment. That's quite a bit. Now, if you take a look over my shoulder here, you can see that they are still working to get rid of that. Next to the wall, because I'm clearly not very good at this, but you can see here, this is what it takes to be a figure skater. You've probably seen a goat video or two on the internet, and while their antics are pretty cute, Hennepin County is using these hungry hooved animals to tackle some big issues.
The goats were brought in to control the buckthorn, an invasive woody species that we have in this forest.
Buckthorn is an invasive species that is spread throughout wooded areas across the country. It crowds out native plants and makes it harder for them to thrive.
We did some cut and treat of the buckthorn, and then you get the resprout of that buckthorn. And that resprout, rather than coming in and spraying a lot of chemical around and destroying the natural vegetation, we're using the goats. And they eat up that buckthorn. They seem to love the buckthorn.
Some might ask why goats are used to do a job that could be done by humans. Those with Goat Dispatch, the company that provides the goats, say in some cases they do a better job.
Usually we go into, ravines or big bluffs and stuff like that where it's hard to actually walk and maneuver over the terrain, and big equipment or manpower would take too long or be too dangerous in some areas, and it's a lot easier to fence in an area and let the goats have at it and maneuver all those areas where humans may not be able to.
And while the goats might be able to maneuver tough terrain more easily than humans, they're also eco-friendly.
The goats are a fairly inexpensive way to control them, and really more environmentally friendly, just because we're not using so much chemical, And we do have native species out here, herbaceous layers, the ephemeral flowers, all that type of thing that gets hurt when you start using herbicides.
In Medina, Meredith Hackler, CCX News.
All of this is a crime of opportunity, so it's preventable.
While package theft is preventable, in some cases, it's inevitable.
Everybody knows that package theft occurs, and it's very widespread nowadays, especially this time of year. So having the people watching out for each other, it shows that people actually care about their neighborhoods.
On Friday, Robbinsdale and Crystal Police worked together to arrest 2 people for package theft. If not for the watchful eyes of neighbors, police wouldn't have known the thefts were taking place.
The neighbors watching out for each other and knowing what is suspicious and not suspicious in their neighborhoods is what brought this case about.
While the suspects are in custody, the Robbinsdale Police Department now has dozens of items that the thieves stole. With no addresses or names on any of these items, police are hoping that by sharing images of the stolen merchandise, community members will soon be reunited with their purchases.
As far as we know, they're from at least Robbinsdale and Crystal, but it could be also neighboring cities.
Now, police officers were just able to get those items that you saw out of evidence today. So if you recognize any of those stolen items as yours, you're asked to come here to the Robbinsdale Police Department with a receipt proving that that item is yours, so you can then take that home. In Robbinsdale, Meredith Hackler, CCX News. In 1991, Minnesota was at the forefront of the nation as lawmakers approved the first charter school law in the country. Today, there are more than 150 charter schools across the state, educating around 60,000 students. Ever since the schools were created, they've become a topic that many educators have strong opinions on.
Do you remember anybody in history class who was hailed as Pater Patriae?
Charter schools and education have always been a very dividing topic.
I personally think that the charter school process in Minnesota is out of control.
One of the best things that I've heard about charter schools is when you've seen one charter school, you've seen one charter school.
Joe Nathan would know. He helped write the nation's first charter public school law and has worked with governors in more than 25 states to help with similar legislation.
Number one is D.
They have to teach to the same standards, they have to take the same statewide tests, and they may not be religious schools, period. And there was one school that was accused, and investigation found that it was promoting religion, and it was closed down.
And the closure of charter schools is an issue that educators like Peter Eckhoff see as an issue.
If you have a charter that fails financially, those students still have the right to a full, robust education, and so they, of course, matriculate back into the public school systems where they are coming in with a less robust background and adding to the burdens of the system without all the financial resources being attached at the same time.
What Eckhoff means by this is that the funding for the student was originally given to the charter school, but when this student is reintroduced to the public school system after a charter school closes, that funding doesn't immediately follow them.
And I think that what it does is it continues to siphon our limited resources as a state into very pointed and for-profit systems. We are seeing more and more of our public school systems struggling to meet the needs of all of the students that come through their door with the siphoning of those resources.
So how are charter schools funded anyway?
Charter schools in Minnesota are public schools. They are funded by state taxes, but they aren't eligible for local property taxes. So they get somewhat less than the local district schools, but they are funded by taxpayers just as traditional district schools are.
And the way they're funded is something that many educators have a problem with.
Obviously, you don't have to think long nor hard to see that as you lose hundreds of students and the funding that goes with it, it takes away resources that may be there for us to have a more robust or a deeper opportunity for our students in terms of some of the offerings that we might be able to grant.
Since the establishment of charter schools, enrollment in public schools has dropped, meaning funding for those public schools has changed. According to the Minnesota Department of Education, in 1992, public school districts across the state had over 831,000 students. Now they have around 805,000 students. While public schools find this to be negative, Nathan feels the addition of charter schools to education has helped make the education system in Minnesota better.
Minnesota ranks among the very best education systems in the world on international exams.
Since charter schools were created, the state has gone toe-to-toe with countries like Finland on international exams.
Minnesota students who are more racially diverse than Finnish students actually do better on several international exams than Finland, which has been frequently touted as one of the very top countries. So I think there's a lot to be proud of.
However, educators like Eckhoff say that charter schools oftentimes lack a diversity of people, since many of them are culturally focused. He also feels they lack a diverse curriculum.
The options that my children had growing up in the public school system, the diversity of courses that they had available to them was unprecedented as we compared it to even the private schools that had massive tuition rates in order for them to attend.
Открыли страницу 15.
While charter schools have their pros and cons, both sides agree that you should do your research before sending your child to either. Another important stat to mention is that since charter schools were established, graduation rates have continued to rise across the board, with students of color's rates increasing the most. While experts say charter schools aren't the only reason for that happening, they say it's definitely a factor.